Sage Wanderer here, coming at you from my shotgun shack in the Texas Outback. Formerly in a van down by the river. Sorry, sometimes I still just have to do that. Hey, I want to talk about the idea brought up by one of my viewers. I think his name is Pat WTF, regular viewer. Brought up that we might be living the John Titor timeline. Dun dun dun. So just to bring you up to speed, what is the John Titor timeline? Just to summarize, and if you want to see the video, the coffee talk I did on this, you'll find it in the coffee talk section, and I believe it's called John Titor, something about John Titor, time traveler. But anyway, it's very interesting idea that maybe he was right. But the story goes like this. Sorry, I'm being swarmed by skeeters already. See how long I can handle this, being swarmed by skeeters. Ugh. Where's that bug spray a guy sent me? All right. But yeah, so John Titor was a guy that called into late night radio, like AM coast to coast, and also through some online, I don't know, some pictures that were spread online. I'm not sure. All this happened a long time ago, back in the 80s, 90s. But he claimed to be from a distant future. And he claimed that in his timeline, in the future, his world was a post-Civil War United States. Or not so really United States. According to John Titor, he said that America would undergo a civil war, basically the city dwellers versus the country dwellers, and that it would all be triggered by an election that was fixed, that there was a dispute over an election that was rigged, and that triggered the Civil War. Could they be talking about the 2020 election? Now, a lot of people think that there's a lot of misinformation going around saying that Donald Trump fixed the election somehow with Russian collusion. But I don't believe that that's what they're talking about. Just this past week, an individual who describes himself as a moderate liberal, he spoke before the Congress, or maybe the Senate. He spoke to the Senate. The gist was Google is in the position to rig the election, and that they did sway the election in favor of Hillary Clinton in 2016 by between 2 and 10 million votes. And that he says that they have the power to just purchase the election through controlling search results in 2020. Look it up yourself. This man testified before lawmakers that in his non-political opinion, in his professional opinion, that the technology in the hands of Google, in the way that they've been using it, in the way that they have been silencing the supporters of Trump, while promoting the supporters of this other ideology, that they have within their power the ability to fix the election. Just knowing that, if Trump loses, are Trump supporters going to be able to accept this new person as president? Especially if it's someone like Kamala Harris, who's vowed to come after guns on day one with executive orders. You can see how I feel about that, right? And I should get the flag from the other flag from the Alamo, the one that says "Come and take it" with the picture of the cannon. I need to get my history straight. That's another battle. Not San Jacinto. Oh, it'll come to me later. Where they had a cannon and Goliad. Maybe it was Goliad. But at any rate, Kamala Harris is talking about coming after our guns on day one. So are Trump supporters going to listen to this individual and what he said about the power that Google and these other technocrats have, their ability to control this, control the information flow, to control where the polling places are. They can tell you where to vote and tell you where the wrong information on voting. I mean, all of this is within their ability. Now, there's no proof they're going to do it. Although there is, it seems to be at least statistical evidence that they might have swayed the election intentionally in favor of Hillary Clinton between 2 and 10 million votes. That's a lot of votes. That pretty much erases her little lead she had under the popular vote. That's not even talking about getting the vote of dead people or getting the vote of illegal aliens to count. That kind of fraud we know is going on as well. This is just the ability of one company, technically, that has the control of the search engines of the world. I mean, they have a monopoly on search for the most part, and so they can control a lot of things from that position, according to this individual who spoke before Congress. So, under the Titor timeline, a civil war breaks out when one side refuses to recognize the fiat president. Now, does that mean Trump gets reelected and the left decides they will not accept Trump? More skeeters. 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 Or does Trump lose the election because of election fraud and Google manipulation and all the other things we've talked about, and then someone like Kamala comes into power in the presidency and the Trump supporters refuse to accept it? They come after the guns, and that's when it explodes. According to Titor, this is kind of the timeline that, you know, there's a last president of the United States that is deposed by the people for being fraudulently elected due to voter fraud and technically, I mean, I think he said the actual manipulation of voter machines is what Titor said in that original timeline. Now, if that's the case, then the future we have to look forward to is somewhat grim, although in the end it seems that American values come out on the other side in better shape than they did going into it. But American power is greatly depreciated according to the John Titor timeline. So the Civil War breaks out over a fraudulent election, right? And it starts when the country people refuse to send the crops into the city people because the city people are coming for the guns. The city people, you know, the government or whatever decides to take the guns. The country people refuse to give the guns up. And so there's kind of this like a Cold War, like this stalemate until the country people refuse to send the crops in. And they basically besiege the city because the city without the country starves. And so when all the ranchers and the farmers went, you know, why are we selling to you? We're just going to keep our stuff. When that happened, then there was a war over agricultural control. That they came to take the crops, that they came to take the food, not militias, but, troops from the city came out to the country to seize guns and food and assets. And that's when the fighting really broke out for real, according to the John Titor timeline. Then eventually, this breaks up into a war that's fought with militias. It looks like the country people are getting the short end of the stick because the city people have all of the military technology, once again, according to the John Titor timeline. And then, in our moment of weakness, Russia decides that their main problem is the people in the cities. The main problem that they see with America, the main beef they have are with these coastal cities. So they use tactical nuclear weapons that are small enough so that they can just knock out the city urban areas without destroying the countryside. And they systematically destroy the left-wing, liberal, city-dwelling totalitarians. Right? I hate to even call them liberals. They're not liberals anymore. They're totalitarian, Nazi, communist. They're out of their mind with the Trump derangement syndrome. But anyway, the Russians, in John Titor's timeline, he nukes the cities. Putin, I guess. Russia nukes the cities, right? And therefore puts an end to the Civil War because the country people just go on living essentially horse and buggy life. But there's still technology. There's still the internet. Apparently, according to John Titor, the internet survives. And guys like me become the new movie stars. Guys that make up their own content. People that tell their own stories. People that, storytellers come back in vogue again. Which is kind of good news for guys like me. And this is all talked about in my coffee talk. But the big question is 2020 the thing Titor talked about? Now, one of the things that if you're a student of this, you'll bring up is that the timeline's all wrong. Because according to John Titor, this was supposed to have happened in 2000. No, it was supposed to have happened in 2000 or 2004 or something. We should have already had the Civil War Well, it's 20 years late. But the argument is, the time travel argument is that he changed the space-time continuum. He messed with the timeline by coming back and telling us about it. And it put it off for another 20 years. You know, I told you when I was a younger man, when my kids were little, I thought the Civil War was going to happen back in 94 and 95 when I was still a young man. And that, you know, we put it off more than 25 years. But here we are basically with the same struggle. It's just the generations have changed. I think we may have it harder now than we did then. There's less of us from the right generation to do something about all of this. But according to Titor, us old folks and veterans and people that still got some grit and some steel and the ability to stand up for themselves are enough to stop the brown shirt, city-dwelling, Nazi commie Antifa types. And but, you know, what really helped us was, I guess, when Russia steps in. And apparently no one invaded America. No one tried to control America. Once the cities were destroyed, they just left us alone and they went on about their lives, according to the John Titor timeline. So what do you think? Are we in some alternate 20-year later John Titor timeline? Is this civil war going to break out over a fraudulent election? Is it going to be the city mouse against the country mouse? Are we going to see civil war in America? And did John Titor predict it all, even if his numbers were slightly off? Tell me what you think in the comments section, and we'll see you next time.